Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for our fifth in our four-part series on rebooting your business in safe mode. We're excited once again this week, of course, to have Brad Lambert with us, the attorney with Lambert Law, who has been leading through the weekly changes. Somebody needs to mute. Sorry, let me go through and see who, there we go, I think I got it. So thank you everybody for joining us. So thank you to Brad Lambert, who's been leading us through all of the changes every single week. And also, of course, to Matthew Vizana with CCS Presentation Systems. Both Lambert Law and CCS are sponsors for this webinar series. And we really appreciate the fact that they were both willing to continue past the original 4 weeks that we had thought would be necessary to help guide you through a safe opening. So we're really appreciative of their time and their willingness to continue leading us through so many changes. I want to start out with just a few announcements. We have a jam-packed week this week, as you will see here. First of all, tomorrow at 9 a.m. we have our virtual young professionals who will hear from Nancy Moore of Sonderhaven. So we're really excited about that. Excited to welcome Nancy, who will talk about guiding people through transitions in their lives and careers. Obviously, there are many things getting shaken up right now. And a lot of people rethinking perhaps careers because they maybe have to or because they maybe want to. And we're excited to hear from Nancy. I've got to move my, sorry, I have to move my menu bar here so I can see. Our weekly update, our member conference call will be tomorrow, of course, at noon, like it always is. We're excited to welcome the CEO of Ascension Providence Rochester Hospital, Chris Palazzolo. Chris is also serves on our board of directors. If you were on the call last week with OCN, our Oakland Chamber Network call on Thursdays, he, as well as Margaret Diamond from McLaren, Nancy Sussick from Beaumont, and I forget her name, but the director at CEO at St. Joe's, participated in a panel discussion talking about how healthcare has changed and how it will continue to change, about how the small business community could help our local hospitals. So Chris will be, if you missed that, he will give some of that same information, but from the perspective of our local community, you know, right here in Rochester, Rochester Hills, Oakland Township. So we're excited to hear from Chris tomorrow. Our OCN small business, oh, and this didn't refresh. I'm sorry, I changed that. Yeah, our OCN small business town hall, of course, is tomorrow. Jean Jernigan at the Auburn Hills Chamber has been graciously leading these. We don't have a confirmed speaker yet, but we are working on someone from the U.S. Chamber to talk about the Paycheck Protection Program Flexibility Act, which passed last week and changed the requirements on the PPP loans. As you know, it was originally 8 weeks that you had to spend 75% of the money you got on payroll. You now have up to 24 weeks to spend, and you only have to spend 60% on payroll. They also extended the loan portion, so the amount you don't get forgiven, to payable in 5 years as opposed to 2 years. So there were some great changes. They did listen to businesses, and we were advocating on behalf of you and all businesses, particularly here in Michigan. We were really affected by that 8-week requirement because we had so many businesses that weren't open yet. Other states had been reopened earlier, so they could meet those requirements. But here in Michigan, until, you know, this week, we know most of everything was still shut down. So really big kudos to our elected officials, our 2 state senators, Stabenow and Peters, and Congresswoman Plotkin. We were in regular contact with them about this, urging them and advocating over and over again that these changes needed to take place, and they did listen. So we really appreciate those efforts. So we're hoping we can talk about that on Thursday at the OCN Small Business Town Hall. We have our virtual Wind Down Wednesday tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and we will be supporting Park 600 at the Royal Park Hotel. So excited. They have been leading the way in the hospitality industry in opening safely, and showing and helping others in the hospitality industry do the same. They've been real leaders actually around the globe. So we're really proud of the Royal Park Hotel, and we're really excited to support them tomorrow for our virtual Wind Down Wednesday. Thursday, really excited about this. Now that we're all reopening and things have been loosened up, we are so excited to hear from Tanisha Johnson. She's a very active member of our chamber, who's going to talk about relaunching your business post-COVID-19. And specifically, she's going to talk about why you need a press release to announce your grand reopening, what you should include in that press release, and how to get it out to the media. So for those of you that don't do that all the time, she's gonna walk you through how to write an effective press release, what you need to put in there, and how to get that out. And Tanisha is someone who has done work for us, the chamber. In the past, we've contracted her to help us with different things, and she is very gifted and talented, and we're really excited about this webinar on June 11th, on Thursday. Then, of course, we also have on Friday, our candidates meet and greet. Very important, particularly given everything that we've been through. We all know that it's very important to understand who's running for these different offices, who are these candidates, and provide you with an opportunity to meet them, not in person, sorry, but via Zoom, and have an opportunity to ask them questions and find out what they're all about. So really more important than ever, you know, that we get to know who's running for these different offices so that we can make informed decisions come August. And then after the August primary, we will in the fall have a candidates forum as well, hopefully in person that time. So you can look forward to that. And then last but not least, on Friday, we have our Senior Services Peer Solution Group, which will hold its second meeting. We're so excited to kick off this peer solution group this year. Anyone who works with seniors is welcome to join this peer solution group. You can just contact myself or Maggie, and we can get you connected with them. So that, I believe, is all the announcements for this week. I'm not going to go over next week, as I think you're probably overwhelmed enough now as it is. But lots of great things going on that we're excited about. So with that, you will also notice that I have a new background finally this week. Something I should have done months ago, 3 months ago, when we first started doing all of these Zoom calls. But, you know, our partners, we have 11 partners in the Rochester Regional Chamber of Commerce, and they are so important to the work that the chamber does. And we always like to thank them for their contributions and support. It is one of the things that helps ensure that we can bring you lots of events like this, and many events which are at no cost to you. So with that, Huge thanks to our presenting partners today. Of course, again, Brad Lambert with Lambert Law and Matthew Vizana with CCS Presentation Systems. And now I am going to turn it over to Brad for today's latest and greatest information.
Okay, well, thanks again, Elena. Excellent intro, and we really appreciate all the things the Chamber's doing, making it possible for us to have some activities when we've all been shut down at home for so long. It's terrific, and I do appreciate the opportunity to co-sponsor this series, which is quickly becoming kind of an anthology as we get into the 5th week here with Matthew and his firm. Again, this is volume 5 of our presentation. You can reach me at these contact points that are indicated here on the first screen. And this particular presentation will be on our LinkedIn page as well as our firm webpage in the next day or two. And I know Elena has been also posting it to the Chamber website as well, along with other materials that we've provided to support you as you reopen your business. Today, I'm going to first review what we've talked about before. Certainly feel free. We've covered these topics before. I'm not going to cover them much in depth today, but certainly during any Q&A, if you've got any question on these topics that we have covered that are listed here, by all means, we can still address them. It's just that we're not going to retouch on them or review them today because we're going to move on to some of the other matters that have been coming to light here in the last week. We've been trying to keep this on an update basis as opposed to a review basis. Here's the topics we are going to talk about. First of all, virtually everybody is open now at this point. The details and sectors we'll get into, and then we're going to talk about the new development, which has been a hobby horse for our governor and others, the contact tracing, and then some of the new restrictions that are out there, the court decisions. 2 very important and interesting court decisions came out last week. I'm going to give you my take on those and certainly address the legal challenges to come. That's what we're going to get into right away. And I will say that really there haven't been a lot of changes for the business sectors that were open in previous weeks. I have gone and compared the orders, the newest orders to the oldest ones. I haven't seen a whole lot of changes for them. So we're not going to make much discussion on that. You can refer back to the earlier materials on the other sectors that we discussed in previous weeks. Here are the legal authorities you should be attending to. There are many more governor's executive orders which are in effect, but these 4 that I've listed are the primary ones for those in business and real estate and professions to really be attending to in terms of trying to comply with the governor's orders. And I will specify that certainly what we're trying to do here is enable you to comply. Obviously, non-compliance, we all know how to do that. What we're trying to focus here on is complying with the governor's orders as they are in place right now. And the other reminder I do want to make here, I'm reminding myself, is that the focus of what we're getting into is mostly for what is called the lower risk or medium risk businesses and enterprises. The higher risk, I suspect most of you who are on the call, or probably all of you, are not in the higher risk categories. Thus, the focus here really is on the medium risk enterprises that we've made, because there's not much, frankly, there's not much difference between lower risk and higher risk in the way it's been implemented. Okay, well, finally, we've got the salons and personal care is open. I know there's a lot of people who are very happy about this development, and on June 15th, the governor gave them 10 days. I know on the update call, the salons were calling for a considerable amount of advance notice. They got it. They got 10 days to get all their supplies and everything else, their appointments and on the 15th. So they have that. And one aspect I up, but I see that the ICL, they actually brought it up as well and caught it. When the governor talks about working remotely now, there's been a subtle change in the language, but it's really not so subtle. It says you should work remotely. Well, telling you you should work remotely is not ordering you to work remotely. There's a big difference there. These words matter. The previous language was you must work remotely where possible. Well, should is more of an advisory that lets you make your own decision of whether you or any of your employees are going to work remotely or not. Now, in addition to the salons and personal cares, obviously the gyms and fitness centers are open. subject to a number of restrictions, which we'll get into in the next couple panels. And as far as I can see, I've looked at this. I've listed the only facilities that I'm aware of that are now closed under the governor's orders. Residential travel and troop camps. I'm really not sure what residential and travel camps are. Troop camps are essentially, I believe the residential and travel camps are probably government run, but I can't even be sure about that. The troop camps are your Boy Scout camps, Girl Scout camps, things of that nature are still closed for now. And then for whatever reason that I really am not very clear on, saunas and steam rooms in your gyms and your other facilities, your training facilities, are closed. They're ordered to be closed. I'm not sure what the reasoning is there. I don't know how COVID-19 spreads there, but nonetheless, that's been the determination that's been made. I can find no general travel restrictions. Everybody knows that we weren't allowed to go up to rental residential homes or hotels or anything else. I've Googled the word travel in these things. Excuse me, sorry about that. And very sensitive. And I have found nothing that has any general travel restrictions. We still have some of the travel restrictions that businesses are supposed to follow, and you can see those in the orders. I'm not going to get into a lot. Mostly it's just saying that business travel should be curtailed or eliminated where necessary. So be aware of that. But as far as citizens of the state, I just don't see anything out there that's saying that, you know, your travel is now restricted. Social gatherings, we're all pretty well aware of this now. We're up to 50 people indoors, 250 people outdoors. I guess my curiosity is what's the difference if there's 251, but we'll save that for another day. You got to draw the line somewhere, I suppose. And then the one that really has me wondering is 500 people in the stadiums and arenas. I'm not sure how you conduct a U of M or MSU football game with only 500 people in it. I greatly suspect that will be relaxed before then, or we would have seen some lawsuits flying by now. And there's probably been some private channel communications to that effect to the Lions, to the U of M and MSU people stating that, you know, don't expect these limitations to be in place by the time September and October roll around. We should certainly hope not. Now, as far as one of the more ominous trends I see in the order is there's a new item out there for 3 economic sectors, and that is contact tracing. And I've listed the 3 sectors in which this particular application has been imposed. The in-home, what's called the in-home services, which really is home repair, basically, is what all of us would treat it as. And they are required to have an appointment record now for their appointments. And I can tell you, having dealt with contractors, especially when it comes to dealing with the liens, the construction liens and so forth, they're notoriously bad at keeping records. It's just, not all of them, I'm not trying to paint with a broad brush, but we have had problems in litigation where they haven't kept the records like they're supposed to in the construction lien area. And I'm wondering what's going to happen here. This is not a good fit. Salons and personal care also, and gyms and fitness centers also. You need to have an appointment record. You need to keep track of the people who are coming in under the governor's orders. I find this ominous because Fourth Amendment type of considerations and also just privacy considerations. Now the governor is essentially deputizing these businesses because she explicitly states in the orders, this is going to be for contact tracing. And we're all familiar with this when we get on the internet. You Google something and suddenly you get 6 ads for that particular item sent to you. It's one thing for private business to be tracing you, and we all know that goes on. It's another thing for the government at whatever level, federal or state, and I know there's a lot of controversies at the federal level. They always have to come up with a justification. That's the FISA court is a great example of that. They have to show that these people are a threat to the U.S. before they get to start tracing or tracking them. So that's going to be a very interesting legal development, and I think there's some serious rights implications there. And you can probably look for some lawsuits on that particular requirement, especially if it gets implemented. Right now, it's just, hey, you all got to keep the records. That's essentially what she's saying. But if it gets implemented, where they're now coming and taking those records or using those records for tracing, I think that could really open up some interesting legal issues. And certainly this could be a trial balloon too. This could be, hey, we're trying to introduce this in the best way possible for government interests. And you could see all kinds of tracing going on here. So this is something to really keep your eye on if you're trying to run your business or enterprise, because there's more to come, I'm quite certain. Other notable restrictions that are out there in these orders, and again, it applies mainly to these three these three sectors that have been kind of picked on in the latest order in terms of imposing restrictions. The in-home services, again, they actually have to do job site screening, which is not the norm for the other sectors. And normally your employees have to, when they come into your business, have to be daily screened, as we've reviewed in previous editions. Now they're saying when you go to the job site, you have to get screened. And I know that's somewhat like the construction industry, which we haven't covered much, but it's a little bit different, and this is a little bit different sector. So it's interesting that these requirements have been expanded to not just the traditional office or work site for the business, but actually where they're going out to do their work. And they even have to ask, as I've noted here in the bullet point, they have to ask about whether there's been COVID-19 in the home, and they're recommended to wear gloves. Workers often do wear gloves, but now these gloves are being mandated for a particular purpose. And the salons and personal services, this is a requirement that is not put in place for any other sector that I'm aware of, and that is that the salons and what I'm calling personal service sector, now have to require the customer to wear a face mask until the service that the customer is getting makes it, inappropriate or unlikely to be able to do so and render the service. So essentially what we're saying, if somebody's going for a hair appointment, you have to wear the mask, which of course is going to go over your hair. And then when you are seated, then you get to take the mask off because there's no way to do the hair treatment of whatever type is being done while you have the mask on. That is the requirement. And that's not just an optional thing, as I said, for the salons. Now the gyms and fitness centers, this is another one that I'm a little bit puzzled by, the 10 feet requirement for workout stations. Certainly there is potential for additional transmission of person's sweat, body fluids, and whatever when you're working out, but 10 feet seems to be a pretty extensive limitation. And essentially what the order says is that you have to have 10 feet or you have to have barriers in place if you can't maintain the 10 feet. And then you see the other requirements here for reducing class sizes and opening the windows and having additional circulation, which is required for the gym and fitness centers. Again, this is the only place I've seen 10 feet. And America's actually rather unique in imposing 6 feet, because worldwide the standard is 3 feet. So we've already doubled it. Now we're tripling it for the gyms and fitness centers. And of course, as I note below, this is somewhat of an enforcement nightmare. I can just imagine some of the agencies talking to the governor saying, okay, you're going to triple our staff? I mean, how are we going to enforce all this? And really, to my mind, it's going to take an insider type of, tell-all, if you will, to have these things really be enforced. I'm not telling you, hey, okay, you can all relax, you're not going to get caught. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying this is how they're going to get enforced. It's going to be very rare where somebody's going to be caught red-handed doing it, violating any of these particular requirements. So that's what you have to be alert for, is the fact that there could be some insider tattletelling, if you will, to go back to the school term, on these particular requirements, which are so precise and very difficult for any government agency that came into your place to see whether you have complied in the weeks and days before they got there. Because again, the record requirements aren't there for most of this. Now, moving on, all of you have heard about, and I'm going to focus on a couple cases, which decisions of the Michigan Supreme Court, which came out last week. And neither one, I'll start out by saying neither one of these cases is final, but certainly all of us want to know, where is this going? I mean, everybody's been anticipating, okay, the Michigan Supreme Court, and perhaps even the US Supreme Court, although that's doubtful, has to step in at some point and just delineate where our rights began and ended during this period, because all this could happen again. We've already had pronouncements from Governor Whitmer, hey, there could be a second wave, there might be a need for doing this again. There's really a growing need out there for people and businesses, professions, all of us that have our own enterprises and just our own personal concerns to know just how far she's able to go when a situation like this arises. Well, here's two cases that give us, at least in terms of reading the tea leaves, gives us at least a little indicator. I'd love to tell you that they're more meaningful than they are, but unfortunately, both of these decisions are interim. The Owasso barber case, I'm sure everybody's familiar with, a 77-year-old barber up in Owasso who just defied the orders, basically. He just kept open, and now his licensing is threatened. He's been criminally prosecuted, the whole thing. Well, the Court of Appeals, in a 2-to-1 decision, it went up from the, as all you might remember, the circuit court judge, which is your trial court, much like you see here over at Oakland Circuit. He said, no way, I'm not issuing an injunction. So that went up to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals, by a 2-to-1 decision, said, yeah, we're ordering him closed now. And the dissenter pointed out, the one, if you will, he pointed out, hey, you can't do that. That's against our rules because I'm not agreeing with you. And the only way you can close this guy is if all three of us agree. That's what the rule actually says. And the other two ignored that and went ahead and ordered him closed and even tried to expedite it while the appeal was pending. Well, that was a pretty easy one for the Supreme Court to handle. That's too heavy-handed for their liking. So in a rare 7-0 decision in a matter like this, they sent it back to the Court of Appeals and said, no, you've got this wrong. You've got to allow briefing. You've got to allow argument. You've got to, and you certainly can't enjoin somebody in violation of your own rules. So I'd love to tell you that this case means more, or that Mr. Mankey is perhaps free to pursue his profession, but the final decision is not out there yet. So please don't read too much into this case, because what really happened there was just a procedural bobble, if you will, by the Court of Appeals. Now, the legislature's case is quite surprising to me. Again, I'll set the table here a little bit. As all of you are aware, certainly the legislature sued in the Court of Claims, which is kind of a home court for government. And the legislature prevailed for the most part, although Cynthia Stevens, who's a judge I've appeared before and I have a great deal of respect for, definitely ruled against the governor as well on one of her emergency orders. So both of them had rulings against them. Both the legislature and the governor had rulings against them in the Court of Claims, so they bounced it up to the Court of Appeals. Now, the question at the Court of Appeals level was whether the Court of Appeals should be hearing this at all. Normally they would. Normally you have one appeal of right in Michigan, and really most states in the US, that you can take up to one court. The Supreme Court of Michigan has the right to turn down any case it wants. It does not have to hear a case. Everybody, you're always hearing people, oh, I'm going to take this case to the Supreme Court. Well, you really don't have the right to. It's optional for the court to take it on, and they have the normal standards you would expect. A case of great import, a legal precedent that really has to be decided because we've got a lot of conflict out there in the Court of Appeals. We've got conflicting decisions. Cases where the Supreme Court really needs to step in and give the guidance that's needed for the legal jurisprudence in Michigan is where they're supposed to be taking these cases. Well, if ever there was a case that would meet that standard, this would be it. I mean, the importance of this case can hardly be, you just can't overstate it. So it was surprising to me when I heard last Thursday that the Supreme Court refused to fast track and bypass the Court of Appeals, because everybody knows this case is going to the Supreme Court. When you look at the Court of Appeals deciding a case between two co-equal branches of the government, the legislature and the governor, it's like the kids' picture. Which one of these parties don't belong? I mean, the Court of Appeals is it's an important court, make no doubt about it, but it's not on the same plane as the legislature and the governor. And the odd thing is, both the governor and the legislature in this case argued that the Supreme Court should bypass the Court of Appeals. And in a surprising move, 4 of the Supreme Court justices still refused to actually take the case. And that's all that's happening here. So everybody needs to understand that the only decision that's being made here is that the Supreme Court is deciding not to take the case on a bypass basis. They're saying, we want to see what the Court of Appeals does first, which, speaking for myself, I disagree. I don't think it's important. Everybody knows it's going to the Supreme Court. I just don't think it's important or decisive to see what the Court of Appeals does. They're not going to develop a factual record. They're just going to make a legal ruling which the Supreme Court can do with whatever they want. They can follow it, they can ignore it, they can adopt parts of it, but they don't have to follow what the Court of Appeals does. So, like I said, the refusal is rather puzzling to me. I did read, there's 18 pages of opinions on that, most as you might expect from the three dissenters, Zara among them, they make a very good case, I think, for the fact that this is a case of extreme importance. And I really have to ask the question, what else is the Supreme Court doing that's more important than this? It's amazing to me that they didn't take this on. And I'm just not persuaded by the attempts to explain this that, oh, because, like, for example, Judge Bernstein says, well, because this case is so important, it's important that we follow all the procedures, including have the Court of Appeals rule. Well, I guess that's got some surface validity, but I'm not persuaded by it. I think everybody knows this is going to the Supreme Court, and they're fully capable of understanding and adjudicating the legal issues at risk here. And the fact is that we really do need the guidance. We really do need to know where the courts are going to come down, and everybody is kind of waiting to see just how all three branches are going to handle this thing. And so far, the Supreme Court has at least weighed in, I think, in a responsible manner in the Mankey case, and certainly they got right to this, which, again, we appreciate the immediacy of their action. Everybody wants to see just what all three branches are going to do on such an important question here for the liberty and commercial interest of virtually everybody in the state. And the interesting thing is, even the four justices, who ruled against the hearing, openly acknowledged this is a very important case. This is very important to the citizens of Michigan. Nobody's arguing that point. But the fact that they turned down both the governor and the legislature for immediate review is just quite a thing. It's quite astounding. The other legal trend I think you should be looking for, so there'll be more to come on that case. Let me go back to that. There'll be more to come on that case, certainly when the Court of Appeals rules. I fully expect it to go up to the Supreme Court, but the issue there is going to be whether it's justiciable. There's a justiciability requirement that you have to have an actual controversy. The court can't just weigh in on something. And the argument's going to be, well, hey, all this, if the Supreme Court's ruling on this in October or September, the argument's going to be, well, hey, it's all done. It's all over. You know, everybody's open, everybody's free. You got nothing to rule on. That's a real concern because of the fact that this could come back around on us. So that's going to be the argument when we get to that point, and that'll be very interesting. The executive orders, like I've mentioned before, they will become regulations. And what I'm trying to do is reading the tea leaves here in Regions 6 and 8, because she separated Regions 6 and 8 in Order 115, but I really can't tell exactly how they're being treated differently. I'd like to have seen a little more guidance on that. She seems to be saying they are treated differently. And the only thing I can really see is that they're apparently not subject to the capacity limits. So the 25%, the 50%, those kind of limits apparently do not apply in Regions 6 and 8, but I'm not even certain about that. And that's important to us because we want to know where she's going in the next stage while these other cases are lingering in the courts. And these are the things I think any business or enterprise owner have to keep an eye on. And the one I want to talk about the most, because again, I really don't think that employee claims of infection, now contact tracing might help, but otherwise it's very difficult to tell where you got infected, okay? It's just, infection cases are notoriously difficult to prove. So what I really want to talk about is the inevitable legal conflicts that I think that business owners, professionals, and others who own their own enterprises are going to face. And that is inevitably, and I'll bet somebody who's here today is going to face a conflict between the governor's executive order and applicable law. And you're going to have to make a decision. You've got a conflict. This law tells me that the person should wear a mask, the executive orders. This law tells me, no, it's dangerous. I'm actually posing a risk to my employee by having them wear a mask. What do you do? Well, all I can do prospectively for you is tell you that the specific should override the general. So if there's a specific regulation out there that says that the person your employee has to follow this procedure or follow this regulation in this specific instance, You have to trust your judgment or trust your advisors, speak to your advisors, and make the call. And I really do anticipate that that's going to be out there. And I'm sorry you face this, but it's going to be out there. There's going to be these conflicts. And of course, we're all looking forward to the mass divisions that we're going to get, where certain people are going to be upset that other people aren't wearing masks, and the people who aren't wearing masks are going to be upset that the people are wearing masks. You're going to have to come along with some plan to manage all that as well. Here are the updates and the new developments that I'm anticipating in the next week. And I only have one more week. I really like what Elena's doing with the final week, where we'll all be able to share our experiences and kind of become wise together in terms of sharing our experiences with this new normal and being able to put together a consensus on certain matters, at least, to where we're able to go forward under this new regime. And that will be on the 23rd. Next week, I'll do another development update as far as what's out there legally. I expect to see a few things, but frankly, the areas of restriction are dwindling happily, and we'll address those. And then certainly I find that telecommuting and expense reimbursements are becoming, I'm seeing that pop up a lot more, so we'll give that some treatment as well. And of course, emphasize the resources and planning tools you have out there to address all these new changes. And a little bit about our firm, as I've done in weeks past. These are the practice areas my son and I work in, and includes, of course, the employment law and the business law, which is paramount in this particular case, although real estate's implicated as well. And we certainly represent businesses and individuals of all interests and sizes in these areas. And again, I'm giving you a bibliography here of some of the authorities that you can look at to determine for yourself just what you're up against. And Elena, that completes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Brad. We appreciate your time and expertise, and the fact that we know there are a lot of questions, not a lot of cut and dry answers, but you're at least helping lead us through this is helpful so that we're aware of where those discrepancies are, so that we can seek further counsel, or make the best decision that we can. I have one question in the chat box, and anyone else, if you have questions, please share them in the chat box and we'll be sure to ask. So before we go on to Matthew, fitness centers are still closed unless there's something I don't know about. Would Mr. Lambert please confirm?
They're open. Yes, they're still closed until June 15th. Yeah, on June 15th
Correct.
Can open.
Right, just like the salons and
Correct.
as well. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
That's what I thought. So the 15th is when gyms can reopen with some specified restrictions.
Yeah, and one thing to keep aware of, if you do own a fitness center or gym, that would mean that your preparedness plan would be due 14 days after that, which would be June 22nd. And I'd say you have to have it. You do not, of course, have to actually turn it into any authority.
Correct. And we've been working hard to get that information out there too, as well, because there was, like we talked about last week, a lot of confusion. People thought they had to file their PRP, their preparedness and response plan somewhere, yes. But as of now, you do not. One other question. Would you please let me know where to find that? I did not see it in the order. Is that in 2021 for the fitness centers reopening June 15th? I've lost track of the numbers.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. 115, yeah, 2020 115.
2020 115.
Brad, I thought in that one that was just northern Michigan fitness centers that were on the 15th, that the ones down here were still closed. It wasn't addressed in the last one, because we work with a number of fitness centers. In the last conversations that I've had with them, they're all thinking that their target is most likely going to be July 1st down here, but it wasn't specified in that last one that they were allowed to open. It was only the northern Michigan gyms that were going to be allowed to open first.
Oh, then that's my misreading. I read it as opening on the 15th.
Thank you, Matthew, for clarifying that. Well, to our point, right? There have been a lot of orders, and it is confusing to try and keep track of
I'll take a quick look at
each
that too.
one and the areas that they apply to as well. So another question, I have an employee going out of town for a funeral. She is driving, but she is staying in a house with family members she has not been in contact with. She is wondering if she would be required to do a 14-day quarantine.
Run that by me again.
So there's an employee who's going out of town for a funeral. She's
Okay.
driving to the funeral. She's going to be staying with family members that she
And one of the
has
family
not-
members has COVID?
No one has COVID
Okay.
that they know of. But will she be required to do a 14-day quarantine since she's driving, I'm assuming, out of state? One of the questions on the, as you know, on the health screening, because I do it every day that we're open at the ice cream shop, one of the questions is, have you traveled outside of Michigan or internationally within the past 14 days?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. And yeah, I think, unfortunately, in that case, I think that's because the answer will be yes. And thus, a 14-day quarantine would likely be strictly required unless the person went out and got a test. I mean, that would be your workaround, is to go get a test. And then if the test comes back, now I know a lot of people are leery about getting tested because if you do get a positive test, then you just made matters worse. But particularly for people who are asymptomatic. But that would be the solution. But I believe strictly applying, if the employee comes into work, has to check yes on that particular question, then yeah, they're going to be subject to the quarantine requirements.
Okay. We don't have any more questions for you, Brad, at this time, but I know you'll stay with us in case people think of something.
I'm going to take a look at that one because that's not my reading of it, but I'll take a look at that.
Thank you. Yeah, take a look at that, and then maybe at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So now we will turn it over to Matthew Vizana with CCS Presentation Systems. We're so excited to have him again with us. And here he is sharing his screen. And take it away, Matthew.
Thanks, Elena. Appreciate it. Brad, great job as always. And I attend these even if I wasn't presenting just to get the feedback because we've obviously used a lot of this information as we've made decisions for our own business. So again, a little bit about CCS, a national audiovisual integration firm. We do have a Michigan office here that my partner and I own. What we specialize in, we'll get to the next slide. So full design engineering, equipment sales, installation, training, and service in and around all things audiovisual. And those things range from cellular booster systems to digital sound masking to, obviously, as we're going to talk about here shortly, temperature test tablets, digital signage, and the full gambit. But what I do want to highlight is that, you know, as a small business owner here, I understand the implications and a lot of what we have all faced as we've trudged through this. So from a Rochester Chamber standpoint, we do provide discounts for chamber members, depending upon the products or the applications. You know, those would vary, but right out of the gate, I mean, anywhere from a 10 to a 20% discount for Rochester Chamber members. We pass that on, and in some cases, you know, maybe a partner or a referral service, but happy to have any discussions and anything that we can do to be a resource and a help for you as you look at areas of your business to get things up and running. Additionally, we've also partnered with another Rochester chamber business to offer financing options. So if there's anything from a technology application, I know that everybody's looking closely at cash flow scenarios. So we actually have a payment program set up where it's a 6-month payment of only $99 per month. And then once that period ends, it would then apply. And you can do anything from a 24-month to a 60-month finance. In addition to our technology applications, that company also, it's called Ascension Capital. and that company also provides for equipment leasing as well. So if you're a fitness facility opening up and you need to finance all of the equipment, those are things that also can come into play. So happy to share that information if anybody wants it. As we talk about return to work, once again, I think it's important to have your plan and really take a look at all of the areas of a facility. Entrances and exits obviously are very important depending upon the size of the organization. You're going to separate the guest entrances from employee entrances. What are the touch points? How are they coming in? Where are they going to fill out those self-assessments at? And do they have to touch additional items, whether those are pens or thermometers, in order to gain entry? And then as you look at other areas in the facility, those shared spaces, I think, are extremely important. And how are you monitoring those? There are various levels of how people are taking this seriously. And within an office, we've had internal conversations of one employee versus another, and the varied opinions that go with that. So just from a business owner standpoint, and Brad has obviously alluded to it, is we're looking to how do we mitigate that risk and make sure that everybody is comfortable in those workspaces. Probably the biggest thing that we deal with on a daily basis now is the question around no-touch temperature scan equipment, thermographic cameras, or the tablet environments, providing that no-touch scenario. So why invest in them? I think it shows, most importantly, that you're interested in the health and the safety of your employees and for the customers, and it's about making people comfortable coming back to your facility. So risk mitigation, adding that extra layer of protection. Are we going to trust and rely that everybody is taking their temperature at home and very candidly being truthful about it if they're showing up for work? Much more hygienic than everybody touching a handheld device and then setting it down. Does it get wiped out in between people coming up there? And then I think much more cost effective than having an employee stand around and of course safety for them in scanning everybody that comes into a facility. So if you have 2 or 3 or 4 employees, it might not be that big of an issue, but as you get into obviously larger offices, 30, 40, 50 people or more, that can definitely become an issue. A number of different mounting options. So we can mount these on the wall. We can put them on a desk. We can put them on a floor stand. Those are movable throughout a facility. You can tie them into a secondary monitor, or you can monitor these remotely and can monitor multiple locations and different sizes. So anywhere from an 8-inch tablet, 10-inch, 15-inch, up to 21-inch, and screen within a half a degree of accuracy within just a couple feet. A couple different styles here. And we now have 5 different manufacturers and suppliers of these tablets. Just like most PPE, this stuff is just now starting to hit. Most of them had an initial order time of anywhere between 30 to 70 days to get those in. So we're just now starting to get the equipment and fulfill those installs. And as Brad alluded to, and some of the conversations, are we going to see a second wave of this? So do you have the pieces put in place now if for some reason we see it come around? Additionally, I don't think that the concern about viruses, and whether it's the flu or anything else, is really going to go away. I think we kind of have that new normal within a facility. So do we have technology that can help us mitigate having somebody show up to work sick, whether it's a COVID related or something else? Obviously, that in a workplace and productivity is something that I think is going to be top of mind. And the virtual receptionist, removing that physical presence from an entrance or a lobby area, putting that person remotely. So from a safety standpoint, moving that or removing that risk of having them right up front. And then a number of different areas that the temperature scan tablets could fit into, in addition to what we showed there, the previous slide, where cameras. So deploy it in a much larger space. So if you wanted to monitor common areas or larger facilities. We have obviously options for all of the different sectors that are out there. And then some of the additional technology options that we had talked about, access control systems, automating and opening of doors, digital signage, which I think is extremely important for businesses, not only now, but as you start to go forward. The digital signage revolution is really where we see the explosion in our business. You're talking billions of dollars in industry now for digital signage and how we're communicating messages. So you can format multiple messages into a display. So one thing may be COVID related, one thing may be social distancing, the other items may be specials or updates to what's happening in your place of business. But those are things that with software, you can have multiple messages displayed at any given time and change those both for external messages and also internal messaging to employees. And then now with the conversations about how many people can we fit in a conference room, there may be needs for having different areas to have Zoom calls and unified communications. So mobile carts are a big part of it, and what we're seeing now with changes in the workplace, the rapid deployment collaboration systems, and then also wayfinding and digital directories, moving that off of a touchpad or a touch screen, or for that matter, a physical person, and then putting that through software onto a mobile device so somebody can interact with it, the safety of their own phone. And then we had talked briefly about health screening forms. So as Brad had indicated, a lot of the requirements now are specific to job site locations. So the one on the left, we actually employ those at a number of our construction sites. If we have a new site that opens, our project manager would take one of those out and put it up. And we require all of our employees, and if we have any of our partner services, they were to scan on site. So these may be things that you look at in your business. We don't carry these. I just added it to the slide to once again talk about it. Elena had mentioned another chamber member and a friend of hers, somebody she had introduced me with here in Rochester. They have a company, and then the one on the right is something that's been put out by Verizon and one of their partner services. So the self-reported screenings and then contact tracing for all of your employees, those are all things that are available now in an app format. So something that you may want to consider putting into your business plan. And then those are my contact details. Again, happy to be a resource. Happy if you have a question offline. Definitely here to help. And even if it's not something that we sell or offer, I want to make sure that just like ourselves as a small business, we all have the resources and information available to make those best decisions as we move forward and try and get back to what hopefully is some sense of normalcy and business again. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I think we have one question for you so far. Does the remote sensor capable of sending the report to a central location, i.e. a receptionist? So I think, is the remote sensor capable?
Yes.
Yes.
So a couple different ways to set that up. We can either run off of one of the tablets, depending upon the distance, just an HDMI cord to a secondary monitor. So somebody can monitor it. And then one of the other systems that we have, it is an app that you would use from a desktop, and that you can see multiple, the reports from multiple locations as well too. So there's different ways that those can be set up and network driven to capture that information. And then most of the companies with all of these products being new, they're in scramble mode with their open protocols. So we've engaged some programmers that they would look at customizing solutions. So if you wanted to tie it into an employee database or a time card system, that those could be custom programs and applications to push the temperature scan and the employee ID information into your other systems for record keeping. So it's all kind of learn on the fly, but we've engaged programmers and the manufacturers to make sure that there's some customizable applications depending upon what the business requirements are.
Great, thank you. Brad, any last?
Yes, I did look at that, Elena. I thank Matthew for making that correction. Certainly, it's important to get this right rather than stay with misinformation. She did something a little different in the order. Normally, in these orders, she has rescinded the previous order in its entirety. So that was the difference. I alluded to, oh, she's treating 6 and 8 differently, region 6 and 8. That was the difference in the region 6 and 8. In fact, and if you look at her paragraphs 2 and 3 of Order 115, that's where she does it. She only rescinds Executive Order 110, which is the previous order, as to the non-essential personal care services, as she puts it. So my presumption would be then that the in-house services, which is what she calls it, would also still be restricted in all regions except what she calls sectors or sections 6 and 8. So my apologies for that overstatement. I guess I was getting too eager to see everything get open again. And like I said, this is different. Normally she rescinds her orders in full. This time she only did it in part. So yes, Matthew was correct on that.
And it just goes to show you when even it's difficult for an attorney to keep up with. How were our businesses supposed to keep up with all of this as well? So
Yes.
yeah, we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
So I want to turn it over to Maggie real quick, who's going to talk about our Back and Better campaign. And again, if anybody thinks of any other questions while Maggie is talking about that, type it in the chat room before we lose Brad and Matthew. We can still ask the question. So take it away, Maggie.
Hi, everyone. My God, I really appreciate you, Brad and Matthew. You're each going to get an email from me afterwards because I have some ideas. So to better promote the business as well as being a sponsor of this program itself. So our Back and Better campaign focuses on promoting area businesses that have guidelines and are ready to celebrate their reopening. Those guidelines, the new safety procedures, social distancing, everything that the governor is requiring from us. The chamber will provide necessary materials to participate, and your great news will be shared on social media, increasing your exposure and visibility to community members and other members of the chamber. So what is the Back and Better campaign? We have signage that we use. I come out with the signage and a little bag with a folder in there explaining everything that you will need to do as a business and what the chamber will do for you. You'll get 2 pieces of ribbon. So when you are ready to open again, you and your staff will go out there, using social distancing and tie the pieces of ribbon back together. This campaign is all about tying the community back together. When I come out, we're gonna take a picture of you with your new sign. We want you to know that this program has no end date or beginning date. This is definitely structured to fit your needs. Whenever you're ready to reopen, you can let us know. It also isn't just for brick and mortar businesses. We suggest that if you don't have a brick and mortar address, that you do it in a park or maybe, at your favorite establishment to tie in another chamber member. So I've listed my email address in the chat box. If you're interested in this, please give me a holler. You can email me, or I believe if you call the chamber right now or go on our website, my cell phone is listed there also. So thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing that. We're really excited about that. Maggie has been working really hard on this campaign, and it's really exciting, very exciting, right? To watch people reopen. So with that, we are just at 12:01. I want to thank once again Brad Lambert with Lambert Law, and Matthew Viziano with CCS Presentation Systems for sponsoring this series of webinars. As Brad said, he'll be back again next week, helping guide us through any additional changes that are happening. And the last week on June 23rd, we will have an open, more of an open forum format, like Brad said, so that you can share what you've been doing, what's worked for you, seek advice perhaps from other businesses on how they've maybe been handling certain situations. Because a lot of us will have been open then for a week or two. And that is, I'm sure, going to bring rise to even more questions. And we're hoping that we can help each other out in solving those issues or helping to guide everybody. So, Brad, do you want to say anything else before we go?
Nope, just thank you. Thanks everybody for all the support and attending, and look forward to next week.
All right, and Matthew?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time and all of the information, Brad. It's been invaluable. So,
Well, thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.
All of the hard
All
work,
right.
Rochester Chamber. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, with that, we will see you all next week.
Sounds good. Be
Bye-bye.
safe.
Bye, all.